July. It's a Tuesday. It's 8:31 in the morning, and we're going to have another very uncomfortable day today. I'll tell you what's going on. Let it be fresh, if it's going to. 81 degrees, high in 96. When I grew up in New York, if they ever had 96, they would put the hospitals on alert, call it an epidemic, a heat wave, and tell people to stay home, not go to work. They maybe close the schools. I mean, it's normal here. It's going to be worse. They're looking at 107 on Thursday. So please pray that we don't get such high temperatures here, please. It's miserable here. And if the power goes out, then you're really stuck. Then you got to start taking showers, and you got to get the dogs wet. If you get the dog's fur wet, they usually do good for 2 or 3 hours. And if you wet them down twice during the day, they usually break the heat, the peak of the day, and they do okay. But it's really a miserable experience. It really is. So I'm not going to go through my normal tirade about how horrible the weather here is in Israel and how they keep it a secret, but it is horrible. But there's places that are worse. Abu Dhabi hits 120. They closed the place down, I'm told, in the afternoon, like about, I don't know what it is, 12, 1, 2 o'clock, they shut down for a few hours. The shopkeepers allegedly don't lock their doors when they go. They just close the door of their shop and leave because they have the cutting the hand off if you steal. So they say people don't steal. These were another pair of sunglasses. I got to cut the glare from the computers. They're a little bit on the dark side, but they're kind of nice. They're polarized and they have actual Corning glass lenses. Glass lenses are great because you don't have to worry about scratching them, and they're cheap. They're $35 on Amazon, and they're polarized, which means they cut all the glare, they cut most of the blue light, they cut this, they cut that. It's good, and you don't have to. Boy, I got some dirt on them or something, and you don't have to worry about them. Like you do these polycarbonate and all these other fancy words for plastic lenses. The original, I remember years and years ago, like 50 years ago, when they came out with different kinds of plastic lenses. It was designed to make your eyeglass lenses look thinner. People weren't wearing a lot of contact lenses yet, so they wanted the eyeglasses to look thinner, so it didn't look like they had such a big prescription, and they were lighter. The fact that they scratched up all the time was irrelevant, right? And then they came up with all different kinds of plastic, and it's I don't think initially you could get lenses made out of glass. You probably have, in America you probably could. I don't know, you probably get less distortion with those, but they're more weight, but they don't tend to scratch. Like, I'll clean these with my t-shirt, but I won't clean my Made in Israel prescription glasses that way because they scratch. Israel, it sells the cheapest, junkiest glasses, the lenses that you could imagine. They're all pure crap. They get all these micro scratch lines in them after a few months, and it distorts your vision, and they're expensive. So what I'm going to do is get my prescription and then order them from America. That's what my wife does, and then you get real glasses. It's terrible living here. I mean, it's really, really, really a hard thing to do. If you were born here, raised here, and went to school here, went in the military, and all your friends were here and stuff, you wouldn't know the difference. But if you were born in another country that's more modern than this place. It's a real burden living here, a real burden, all the time. Okay, and on top of that, the people discriminate against you. Yeah, 2/3, 1/3. All right, so let's do our being the Bible believing site. Let's do our praise, and then we'll move on. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 There's no Messiah like Yeshua. There's no Messiah like Yeshua. Okay. Now, let's see what's going on here. Let me start with the chat for the live stream, or both. And let's do a little housekeeping. There's a little bit of background white noise here from the fan. I'm aware of that. I can't sit here without the fan. The air conditioner was ordered and paid for, and it'll be here by the end of the week. And then when I have possession of that, I can schedule our maintenance guy to come over here and do the install. But I gotta lay hands on the thing first, and because I can't tell him, oh, come here on such and such a date, and then he shows up, and then the unit's not here, so that's, not, so anyway, it'll probably be next week till I have the thing running. And I bought one that had a silent mode and a super silent mode, so I don't think it'll create any noticeably disturbing white noise, hopefully not. And it's a small room, so it should get it plenty cool. And I'll shut the door so it'll really make things quiet, but in the meantime it's so uncomfortable with the fan not running. It's hard to be here. And sitting outside is an option, but then I got to deal with all kinds of bugs, and makes its own problems. Dog barking, traffic noises, doesn't lend itself that great. I could try sitting in the back with the birds. That might be quieter. I gotta think about doing that. But back there you need to run a fan too. So that's the other problem. And this fan is running for the birds, so I'm not gonna get a big gain. If we get lucky, sometime in September the weather will cool down. We'll start getting highs in the 80s. And if we're lucky, we'll stay like that for 6 to 10 weeks. We had that last year, and we just were really fortunate and blessed, I should say. That happens again, it'd be wonderful. I don't know what's worse, the winter or the summer. Probably the winter. Summer's easy. You just throw on a t-shirt, shorts, slip into the Crocs and with the holes in them, and that's it. But you don't get freezing weather and you don't have snow here, so while the sun's a pain in the neck in the summer, you don't have to get up and shovel it. All right. before we start on the war, people talk about how there'll never be another temple and how silly it is and it's all spiritual. Do they know that the temples on earth are copies of what's in heaven, and Jehovah in heaven has a temple? They should put that in their stew pot when they start cracking off stupid way they do. I've never heard one of them give a spiritual explanation of Ezekiel chapters 40 to 48 with the temple, Joel, or Yoel is the Hebrew, with the temple, and I haven't seen any of this. We have one prayer, well, it's really a toss request for Mike. Toss for Mike. Toss request for Mike. Okay. Okay, and before I get into I could get into the war first, but before I get into the war with Hezbollah, I'm going to do a Bible study after on the nations raised, the heathens are raging. I'm going to do that Bible study. It involves 3 scriptures, Psalm 2, Psalm 46, and Psalm 21. I'll do that after. I want to talk about BRICS briefly. They now, I understand, have 41 nations applying to be in BRICS. They have 5 in BRICS now. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. South Africa's a pretty busted up economy. Brazil ain't doing so hot. And Russia's not doing so hot. All right. Will they take in all 41 nations? Now that'll take them to about 25% of the nations. Will they do that? I don't know. I have no idea. They probably not quickly if they do it at all. They got to make sure they have the correct gold reserves and audit them and stuff like that. It's not going to be fast. I don't think they're going to just open up and say, yeah, all 41 come in. I could be wrong. They'll probably, when they announce the rollout, which is next month, they'll probably take a few new members in. My guess, maybe another 5 or 6 or something, stronger members. They're not going to take members in that are falling apart financially and people are starving and they got plagues and no educational system. Food shortages, and what are they going to do that for? I don't know. All right, so we'll know a lot more about BRICS when they do the rollout for the gold-backed trading currency, not a regular walk-around in your pocket currency, just trading. So from one country to trade to another, and with that, they have their own fiber optic cable network coming up, so they're going to be able to conduct SWIFT-type transactions amongst themselves without America monitoring it or trying to control it, because America has cut them off, some of these countries from, like Russia, from using the SWIFT system. So this bypasses that. Now, will this make the US dollar weaker? Don't be so quick to think that. Just don't. America is shrewd. They've got hordes or rooms full of people that have gone to Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Berkeley, Columbia, all of them, Wharton, all the business schools and economics schools, and they understand how to take countermeasures against this, and you take roomfuls of them, and you have think tanks like this, and you hire them, and you get different proposals, and then you play them against each other, and eventually by committee, which is bad, you get down to a plan. And they probably already will shortly have a plan by August. Or they may have to wait till it gets announced officially how it's going to work. But I don't think they will. All they really need to know is there's going to be a gold-backed traded currency. Now, if these people in BRICS don't take proper precautions to make sure the gold assets are locked in someplace and the gold then disappears, or the people are starving and there's civil war and the gold disappears and this and that, and then the BRIC gold-backed trading currency isn't really backed, that's a catastrophic end for them. Okay? So it's not going to be that simple. They got to make sure that these people are bellying up to the bar and posting the gold wherever they got to post it, however they're going to do it. I'm very curious to see how they're going to do it. I don't think a lot of countries are going to put their gold in China or Russia with all this war on the horizon. They'd be pretty dumb to do that. So I don't know what they're going to do yet. They're not going to go put it in Zurich, in Switzerland, because Switzerland's not in the club, so they're not going to play ball. I don't know. We've got to wait and see. This is critical. The people have to be assured that the gold is really there. Or it's just the same thing as fiat money with computer entries, and you're just going around saying, instead of just saying, oh, we got, so many trillions of dollars, and then you're changing and saying, we got so many trillions of dollars that's gold backed, and it's not gold backed, so it's just a joke. So number one, don't be so sure people are going to take this as utopia and just jump right in. Okay, some of the ways America could wreck them, and I do mean wreck, W-R-E-C-K, wreck them, is to manipulate the price of gold down. So they put their gold in, they form, and I don't know, what's gold, $18.50, let's say, an ounce, right? And then they plunge it to 12 or 13, if they can, which I think they can. All they got to really do is plunge it down to 15 or 16. And now all the assets and all the currency that they issued isn't backed by the gold as much as it was. You got my drift? They take so many metric tons or ounces of gold, doesn't matter how you denominate it, say ounces of gold, and they pledge it in, and the gold is $18.50 an ounce when they do it. Gold goes to $1,500, so now the gold assets, in other words, they lost $350 an ounce, so the amount of gold in their trading currency needs to come way down. Well, prior commitments and stuff could prevent that. So what if they drop gold to $1,200? So you got $650 an ounce reduction. So it shrinks their trading currency to make it fairly useless. You see what happens? Can China and Russia prevent this? Maybe, I don't think so. India's making a mistake, okay? By hooking and wagging up to them. But India can't get what it wants from America. America doesn't jump and dance to India's music. So India's going to China and Russia, who are probably courting them nicely. And India buys a lot of stuff, and India is in a position to sell many things to these foreign countries. So, yeah, India's got probably more opportunity running with Russia and China, but it's also a stupid move. And NATO tried to reason with India by saying join NATO. Of course, that means they have to drop the BRICS. But India is not so interested in the protection of the NATO countries. India could protect itself to some extent. It's got big army, big air force, navy, money, resources. It could easily draft 5 or 10 million people and have them in uniform quickly. Having millions and millions of soldiers is worth something. But then again, not that much, because what do they do in the battlefield? They're just really cannon fodder. You know, you're better off with missiles, planes, destroyers, tanks, than you are with foot soldiers, who really don't have much of a combat role anymore. They're more like after you conquer the enemy and you bust up their military and you occupy them, then they're useful. Patrolling streets, stopping riots, demonstrations, checkpoints, border control, things like that. Sort of military/police actions. So one way to disable BRICS is plummet the price of gold down. And then up, and then down, and then up, and put them on a roller coaster, and that's not going to work then. See, when America had the gold standard, they were pegging the gold at $35 an ounce. Now, at that time, I think you would probably find gold might have been selling in other countries for $50, $60, $47. But it wasn't selling for multiple, it wasn't. It was a different world. So they were able to peg it. And silver was an ounce of silver was the silver dollar it was pegged. Okay. But with the gold standard, gold was, I think, controlled. No, actually, they had gold before the gold standard. No. Before they fixed the price of gold at $35, they had gold. They were using basically gold coins, a double eagle, a $20 piece was an ounce of gold. That's how they were doing it. So the price of gold was basically pegged that way. And the paper certificates or promissory notes that you could go to a Federal Reserve Bank with this gold certificate, go in there and give them the certificate, and they'd give you a gold piece. This is when gold was running around as pocket change. So they had a $20 gold piece, which was an ounce, a $10, which would have been a half ounce. They had a $5, which would have been a quarter of an ounce, and then they had lesser known gold coins that were small, and it was not very popular. They had to be thin, and then they would bend, and it didn't lend itself. So you basically had the $5, the $10, and the $20, and they had commemorative $50 gold coins, but that was an unusual thing. Mexico did have a $50 gold piece, but that's Mexico. It was very popular in the many years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago. People would buy them because they were large, and they would put them in a holder and wear them around their neck on a gold chain. Not a real creative piece of jewelry, but it was somewhat popular. People were doing it, and they started putting them on not little flimsy chains. They put them on rather thick chains. They call them Cubans, but pretty thick. And mostly men would do this, and probably 90%. And they wouldn't have a clasp on the chain. They would make the chain big enough to fit over their head, and it would just be solid chain. So if somebody ran by on a motorcycle or in the street and just grabbed the chain and yanked it, they'd give you a stiff neck, sprained neck, and knock you over maybe, but they wouldn't get the chain off. Whereas if you had a flimsy little clasp or a thin little jewelry chain, they'd just rip it and run away with the coin, which was more than an ounce of gold. I don't remember how much it paid. A friend of mine invested in them. He bought about 50 of them or something like that. And he didn't do that good with them. I mean, he wound up selling them to friends of his that were using them for jewelry and stuff. And they also used the double eagle for jewelry. So that's how they denominated it. That's how they did it. When America in the early days was using the gold coins, the price of gold was fixed. An ounce of gold was $20. Period. That was it. When it went to the $35, I believe in the 1930s, that was the end of the gold certificates, and they were just having silver certificates after that. And the silver dollars were still running around at $1. And the people didn't mind it that much. The gold was better, but they didn't mind the silver dollar thing. But they were conditioning the people to not have hard money, you know. So if somebody, you know, had 5 $20 gold pieces, it was $100, right? And if they had 50 of them, it was $1,000. And you were probably able to buy a house with land for under $1,000 in the 1800s. So you could just basically fill a pouch up with gold coins and go stack them out on the table and buy and sell the house. No checks, no paper money, nothing. So that's how things were going. You know, I saw a video yesterday a guy made about, in San Francisco, about an area called Embarcadero. What's Embarcadero? San Francisco built some high-rise, very scenic and pretty office buildings, I think, in the 60s. By the early 70s, they were there already. By 70, either 71, 72. So it might have been built in the late 60s or very early 70s. There was a network of, I don't know, half a dozen of these buildings. They had streets running through them, and there was a lot of them. And they were high. They must have been 25, 30, 40 floors. They're pretty high rise. And they had elevated malls in there. Outside, well, walkway, I don't know what this is, like 2 or 3 floors up, you go in, take some escalators, and then they had a walkway with tables and chairs and benches outside. And they had a lot of bars in there, a lot, and restaurants, and businesses with shops in there, promenades and stuff like that. Many, many stores, must have been like over 100. And it was a very popular thing for people to go to the various bars in the Embarcadero for happy hour after work. Alcoholics. San Francisco, I know from the days I lived there years and years ago, they had a very high alcoholism rate. Okay? So they would, men and women after work would go to these bars for happy hour and you'd get drinks cheap. Now, I don't remember what, I know in the 70s, 71, 72 era, San Francisco, not in the Embarcadero per se, in the neighborhoods, had popped up with a lot of what they called fern bars. And that was like that TV show Friends. They looked like that. They had sofas and easy chairs and tables and plants all over the place. And people would go in there early in the evening and drink, and they had happy hour. And back then they would sell Irish coffee for 50 cents. Now, Irish coffee is a good drink for San Francisco because probably 11 months or 11 and a half months of the year, by 5 o'clock it's very cool and chilly in San Francisco. Okay. Well, they would usually run the happy hour from 5 to 7, 2 hours. And Irish coffee came in a funny glass, the kind of glass you'd eat a little ice cream sundae out of. You know, it was narrow and high and kind of curved. Anyway, they would put coffee in there with cream, or like whipped cream. And it would melt and create a cream effect. And they gave you a shot of Irish whiskey in there. And they made them strong. The idea was, were they making money at 50 cents? Well, with the cost of the liquor, the coffee, cleaning the glassware, the labor, the rent, the heat, the air conditioning, and all that, they were probably making a little bit of money, maybe 10, 15 cents or something like that. Maybe a quarter at best, okay? They weren't breaking even, they were making money because, you know, the coffee is cheap, and the Irish whiskey, the way they buy it, it probably cost, back then, 1970, it was probably $2.50 a bottle for a fifth where they bought it. So, you know, yeah, so you're at $2.50, and you know, they probably at most cost them 15, 20 cents. And they would want the people to come in there and get looped, get drunk, right? So some of the bar owners, when the women came in with their purses, they were worried about their purse. The guy would take their purse and put it behind the bar, and they would never steal anything from the women. And the people have one, you know, there's some people that would stop and have one on the way home. Because they want to talk to somebody, meet somebody. Other people might have two. And then a lot of these places had a restaurant. So they'd have two, and then they'd say, let's go have a dinner. Then they'd eat in the restaurant. You know, it wasn't a great restaurant, you know. They'd eat in the restaurant, and then when they were finished with the restaurant, maybe they'd have more drinks, and by then happy hour was over. You know, the other drinks were cheap too in happy hour, you know. I wasn't a believer back then. But, so in the Embarcadero, they probably had the same thing, 50-cent drinks, 75-cent drinks, or something like that. Not a lot of money. So drinks were not $9 or $10. There was, you know, for $9 or $10 back then, they'd give you the whole bottle, you know. So today, drinks are crazy, you know. Back then, you were allowed to smoke in the bars, so half the place at least was smoking. And I don't know what cigarettes cost back then. They were probably up to 50 cents a pack, or maybe 60, 70 cents, something like that. They weren't $1. They were probably more than that, 40, 50 cents. Maybe less even. They weren't much. And I know you were able to go to the liquor store and buy yourself bottles of rum or bourbon or gin for, you know, $4 for a fifth. That's all it cost. It was cheap. And that's retail. So the Embarcadero had this, and it was a thriving place for decades. Guy took a video of it the other day and walked all around these walkways and everything else down there. And 99% of the businesses were closed. They were gone. Why? Well, I guess they had enough. Shoplifters, attacks, robbers, who knows why. People still working in the Embarcadero. And then he walked around in the neighborhood and there were other stores down on the street level. And they were closed too. In the area. So, I mean, San Francisco is like a ghost town in a lot of ways. Now, I don't know what's happening to the expensive real estate there, but San Francisco, I guess, before COVID, before this homeless crisis came along, was super expensive to live. Super expensive. You know, in parts of New York today, studio apartments, the small one-bedroom apartments in nicer neighborhoods are $5,000 a month. Now you're probably looking at 600 square feet, 700 square feet for $5,000 a month. See what the S-bots do? They're so intense on forming neighborhoods where there's no spirit-filled people, so they have peace. They're the critters that they host want peace, so they don't want anybody running around with the Holy Spirit, so they run the prices up in these neighborhoods and they all move in there. But they've gotten to idiot proportions. So I imagine as San Francisco, the rents would have to come down by, like what, 70% reduction or something? I don't know. It's just the destruction of that place is just unbelievable. Are the businesses still there? I don't know. I don't know all the details, but it's pretty bad. If you go back to around 1980, you were able to go to a really great neighborhood in San Francisco like Pacific Heights. Move into one of these condo buildings where you had a 3,000 square foot apartment, basically a whole floor of a building with unbelievable views. Unbelievable. You'd have yourself a balcony that was probably 40 to 90 feet long, probably 4 to 5 feet wide, probably 4 or 5, generous enough. And a lot of people would put windows up on the balcony. You know, you had a guardrail, you know, like a little fence that came up to your waist. And a lot of people had that made out of, you know, special glass that wouldn't break. And you had to keep it clean so they could see out when they looked down. And then of course the wind is so bad there, to use the balcony is, you know, would be nice, fun. I would say, depending on the day, if you were very lucky, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, that would be rare. Their hot month is October, but that would be rare. 11 o'clock till between 2 and 3, you could use that balcony, and then the fog would roll in. But some of these people like to use the balcony for other things. They like to eat out there, sit out there, look at the water, listen to the ships, blow the foghorns, which goes on all night long. Ooh, it's really relaxing. It's nice. I used to like it. So they'd have glass walls put up, and of course the opening at the top was there, and that would cut the wind. And they'd make the walls so you could open them with sliding. So when it was nice out, they could get all the fresh air, but the fog would yuck it up, so they had to go with squeegees and clean it. But these people usually had a maid, and the maid probably got up in the morning and one of her chores was to squeegee the windows and keep them clean. And they usually had a maid's apartment in these things. They had two doors. So the elevator stopped on your floor and you had to put a key for the deadbolt in the door to get out on the floor. You basically didn't get in the floor. Some of them you did. Some of them you actually walked into the apartment. Others, you went out of the elevator and there was a little landing there. And they had two doors. One was for the maid's quarters and the other door was to get into the apartment. And then sometimes there was a staircase in the back for deliveries and stuff. So it was all different. It varied, but you usually needed a deadbolt to get onto the floor. So it kept the people pretty secure because you would be breaking the door to get onto the landing. And most people would hear that. And some of them had two deadbolts in there. Sure, they could be picking the lock, but it's not that common for some crook to go pick the locks, And these apartments were just absolutely gorgeous. They usually had more than one balcony, and they were old Victorians, and they were fantastic. I mean, solid wood paneled elevators, lobbies that were just gorgeous, doormen, concierge. They had garages. You had a garage guy that would pull your car to the front when you were coming down, and when you came back, you just dropped it and then parked it. Oh, it was quite a life. And those things were $250,000 back then. And I think in their peak, they probably went up to 2, 3 million, 4 million. And then they dropped back down. There's one building there called 999 Green on Russian Hill. That's a beautiful, gorgeous brown glass and concrete building that's about 30 floors up on the top of the hill. I've never been in there. Yeah, I think I was in the building there once, maybe, I'm not sure. But they're not big apartments. They're basically 2 bedrooms and they come in at about 1,000 square feet or something like that. So they're adequate, but not really nice. These are modern, not Victorian, and those things were ghastly expensive. And that's just for people that want the view. But the mansions got views too all over there, and the older condos. Anyway, I don't know what happened to those apartments. Who the heck's going to pay $3 million to buy a condo in San Francisco today? I think many of the restaurants have closed. I don't know what's going on. Apparently it's still functioning, but it's pretty confusing to me how it's getting by. I don't know. But China's this way too. China is falling apart. They got cities where, they don't have the crime like America, but they got cities where all the foreign businesses are closed and everything. China is in trouble economically. You must understand this. Sanctions have killed them. Russia's in trouble economically. That's why they're doing BRICS. They're desperate. Will BRICS work? I don't know. It could backfire on them. It's got risks. Now, there's a rumor floating around that when the NATO meeting happens, I think today or something like that, they're going to announce that Ukraine joined NATO. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's farcical. There's requirements to join NATO that Ukraine would have to meet, and they haven't met it yet. And they're going to donate $500 million to Ukraine to get various goods and equipment to meet these requirements. So that's not going to happen. If they did that and Ukraine ascended, as they call it, into NATO immediately, like today, they'd be at war with Russia immediately. NATO would, and they're not doing that. Are they preparing for war? With Russia, yes. Does that mean it's imminent? No, preparing's not imminent, but I would think it's going to happen. I don't know when. It may not happen for, 8, 10, 12 months or, some very long period of time as they keep preparing. And the more they prepare, the more doom and gloom destruction they're going to do to each other, as per Jeremiah 30:11. They're going to really hurt each other. And remember what you're looking at here. You're looking at Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea fighting together, with some little players as well, Venezuela, Cuba, which I don't think going to amount to a hill of beans, but those two. But the rest of them can cause a lot of problems. Now, I understand that China has purchased an incredibly high amount of drones from Iran. I think it's something like 50,000 or some big number. I didn't realize it was that high. I thought it was 15,000, but I think it's 50,000. And what are they? They're not going to open up Amazon and deliver packages with them. That's not going to happen. So China is definitely gearing up for war, without a doubt. Okay. There's no doubt that China's getting ready to go to war. I mean, that's a given. Now, I wish I could figure out how to make I found the setting. See if it works. Doesn't work. There were messages I put up in the chat that I don't see anymore. I don't know where they went. I don't know why they're not here. I didn't take them down. And I just switched it over from top messages to all messages, and I still don't see them. Okay, so 50,000 drones. What more specifically, they're going to use them against Taiwan, and if Japan acts up, they'll use them against Japan. The United States has got a lot of, their strategy is not so much let's move 3 aircraft carriers into position in the Pacific. I don't think they want to do that, because I think today aircraft carriers are in jeopardy. Not from countries like Nigeria or third world countries, but they're in jeopardy from the first world countries, which China is. So I think they have a decent amount of anti-ship missiles that can be shot at aircraft carriers, various torpedoes, naval sea mines, and aircraft shooting missiles and rockets at them, plus the surface rockets being shot off the land and everything else under the sun. And the other problem is a drone swarm attack. So China's got thousands and thousands of drones, and there's an aircraft carrier. They want to get rid of the aircraft carrier. What's the problem? Send 75 or 100 drones after it, and something's going to hit. And the aircraft carriers are, relatively fragile when you start blowing them up, So they could do it with drones launching missiles, which would probably be like a 3.5-inch missile, which would be light damage. Or they could just fly the drone into the control tower, the conning tower, with a decent explosive and take out a lot of the conning tower, and that could cause a lot of problems for the ship. But they have, I'm sure, duplicate equipment below deck that they could use in a pinch, but I don't think they could direct the air traffic without being able to see it. They could also blow holes in the top deck, which makes it difficult to retrieve the aircraft and launch it. So the aircraft carrier, I think, is mostly a tool to be used against another country that's nowhere near as capable militaristically as you are. So I don't think they're going to bring a lot of naval vessels there. They have a lot of bases around the Taiwan-China region over there. Philippines is a strategic one, and they're more or less relying on aircraft, because I think their aircraft is a much better risk to use against China and North Korea than naval vessels. You're not going to really be able to swarm attack an aircraft because drones don't go fast. They don't have drones that break the sound barrier that I know of. Maybe they do, but I don't know of any. So the drone's not going to really be a threat to the aircraft. So the drone threat isn't there. The other problem they have is they have naval drones, submarine and surface, that they could kamikaze attack, drive the boat into the ship. So the aircraft carrier has a lot of defense mechanisms. They have the phalanx guns, 2 or 4 of them, I think 4 of them, that spray a wall with 20 millimeter shells up in front of an incoming projectile or projectiles, but it's not going to hold up against the big swarm attack. All you need is 2 or 3 kamikaze drones to get through and hit the ship, and the ship may not sink, but it's not going to be functional, or they'll have to probably abandon it, leave a skeleton crew or something like that. Of course, it's all going to depend on where in the ship the drones hit. Doing repairs in a war on a ship is a problem. So if the ship lies dead in the water, then the surrounding destroyers and missile cruisers and submarines have to defend it until it could be fixed, which could take some time. And they could start swarm attacking the destroyers. So I think the United States has shifted its emphasis to bases on land in the region that are in close proximity to Taiwan and the waters where China would be active, and they can do air attacks. Okay, so what happened in Hezbollah? There's a piece of land in Lebanon near in Israel that's a disputed piece of land. I forgot to name this. It wasn't Sheba Farms, it was something else. So what happened a couple of weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago or something, is Hezbollah, which is an unofficial terrorist organization in Lebanon that does have some sway with the government. They hold seats in parliament and stuff. They went and they put 2 tents up, not pup tents, big, like military operation room tents. Right? Not for surgery, but I'm hearing dogs. I don't know. It's not my dogs. So they put 5 soldiers in each tent. They put 2 up, 10 soldiers, as observation posts in area that for decades has been considered Israeli territory. They're saying, no, it's ours, we're taking it back. Israel got one of the tents to pack up and leave. The 5 soldiers in the tents left. The other tent refuses to leave. So Israel's negotiating with Hezbollah, and they're telling them that they will take them on in a war if they don't leave. And why would Israel do that? Because Israel, unlike most of the NATO countries, understands the Muslim terrorism military mentality. And Israel understands that if they let them do that, it's just going to continue and get worse and worse. So Israel has to stop it. Well, Israel trying to not have a war went to the UN about this, and the UN's taking the side of Israel, I believe, and they want Hezbollah to take the tent and the soldiers out of there. They won't. Israel's been futzing around with this, I guess, for 3 weeks now. And Hezbollah is now interpreting that as weakness. And now they're demanding that Israel leave this other area. And if they don't leave this other area, they will, they said, escalate against us, which means go to war against us. What do you think it means? So Israel was talking the talk, but not walking the walk. Now, what's going on in Israel? So Hezbollah is threatening us. Now, will Israel evacuate this piece of land and let Hezbollah occupy it? Chances of that are not slim and none. The chances of that are stone cold zero. It will never happen. Israel will never do that, ever. Okay? Hezbollah, by much of the world, is a terrorist organization, and Israel is not going to have a lot of problems with the political scenario of fighting them. How did this come to pass? Because we got an idiot named Netanyahu that's been active in Israel politics he was prime minister in Israel for 20 years. And during his reign, the Hezbollah has accumulated over 100,000 rockets. So this man is grossly incompetent, you must understand that. He just has a reputation, but he's a gross incompetent. He's unfit to be the manager of a 7-Eleven, okay? And he runs the country. He's a liar. He breaks his word. The politicians openly in the press refer to him as a liar. He's just a worthless piece of garbage. So, he let it happen. Now, what's he going to do? Well, he has a coalition government with some ultra right-wing people in it, and they don't want this to happen with Hezbollah flexing their muscles. So they want to see a war with Hezbollah rather than this. So he's going to have to go to war with them. Now, is Israel going to do a preemptive strike against them? I think. They got to decide, is Hezbollah just flapping their jaws, or are they really going to do it? Now, what's the worst downside of the war with Hezbollah? Well, first of all, it's going to cost us many billions of dollars, but they don't seem to care about that. The next problem is Hezbollah can probably sling a certain amount of advanced missiles to Haifa, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, maybe some other cities, and border locations like Nahariya, Metula, stuff like that. Now, if they actually do that, and these missiles actually start hitting high-rise office and residential buildings in Tel Aviv, that's Netanyahu's power base, the rich, the millionaires. And those are the ones he cares about, the S5 millionaires. And he'll respond harshly, but it could be too late. Will they hit Jerusalem? Probably, but in the past, there's a lot of hesitancy to use missiles in Jerusalem because they could miss and hit the Dome of the Rock or the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the fourth most holy place in Islam. So they may not attack Jerusalem, or they may, we don't know. We really don't know. Israel can put Lebanon in the Dark Ages within a fraction of a day. And I'm afraid this is what it's going to come to. Israel gave Gaza back, which was really pressure from the Americans. And Netanyahu was all gung-ho for it. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He's dumb. Believe me, this is not a smart person. He's a vicious, mean, evil person that wages political warfare against his political enemies. And he's learned how to play dirty in politics, but I don't see him as a very smart, accomplished individual. I think he's a schmuck. He's getting caught in all his lies. He's in 3 active, ongoing criminal trials while he's sitting as prime minister. The people of Israel have their eyes closed and their ears stopped up by the Lord. It says so numerous places in the Bible. So they don't understand this. They don't see it like I'm telling it to you. They don't see it. But not all. Recently, some have, and they're out there protesting. And Netanyahu, to stay out of jail, is trying to reform the laws and strip the High Court of their power. But people have been protesting like crazy about that, and they shut the country down. Now they're shutting the country down today. As I speak, they've already started shutting the country down, like the airports, the highways. There's a company here called BIG, B-I-G. They own many malls in Israel, outdoor strip malls and indoor malls. And, it's obviously an expire operation. And they said that if the Knesset passed the first reading of this reasonableness law to take that away from the Supreme Court was able to strike down not so much laws, but actions and policy decisions of the government based on it's not reasonable. Okay? So they have to go through the Knesset 3 times, take a vote, to make a bill become a law. They went through the first reading yesterday, and it passed. The protesters said if you could do that, we're going to go hit the streets. And the owner of the big mall said if you pass it on the first reading, I'm shutting the malls. He backed off a little bit, and he told the store owners in the malls that if you want to open during the shutdown, you can. Okay? But if you stay closed with me closing the malls, you don't have to pay rent for the days that we're closed. You can reduce your rent. This guy has a lot of malls. Now, there's other malls that he doesn't own. Now, I don't know who else is going to go out on strike or what they're going to do, but what the Netanyahu government is trying to effect, they got rid of a police chief, or they're trying to get a more aggressive, self-hating Jew police chief to go out there and, hit the protesters in the head with their clubs and kick them and handcuff them with handcuffs too tight to cut the circulation off, tear gas them in their face, and, pepper spray, all the brutality, that's what they want, to deter the protesters from protesting. It's not happening.
I'm going to go out for a minute. I'm expecting delivery. Can I call you if it happens? I don't expect it
Yeah, just call. I'll meet the guy, no problem. So, it's ongoing, and I don't know how effective it's going to be yet, but we'll take a look later on in the broadcast and see. So what Hezbollah is doing is they see weakness in Israel. This moron Netanyahu, this whole thing is about three things. Okay, one foremost is Netanyahu wants to change the laws to stay out of jail. He wants to have his Knesset, his coalition, pass a law that says the prime minister cannot be put in jail or civilly or criminally charged for anything he does during his term of office as a seated prime minister. If he gets that passed, then all his criminal cases get dismissed. But the High Court, the Supreme Court, as they call it, won't let him pass such a law because it's giving him a license to steal it. And they'll strike it down as not being reasonable, or they'll strike it down for other reasons. So the reasonableness law that passed says the Supreme Court can no longer use that to stop any action of the government. Now, the Supreme Court is heavily left-wing bent, and they got too much power. But Netanyahu wants to take all the power away from them, give himself immunity, and then he basically wants to get this law through where he has immunity from anything and everything. That would include assassinations and all the other stuff. To get himself immune, he has to neuter the Supreme Court. So they want to pass a bill that says if the Supreme Court strikes a law down for any reason, all the Knesset has to do is vote on it again, and if it passes with a simple majority, 51%, whatever, 61 out of 120 votes, if they pass it a second time, then it becomes law, and the Supreme Court is irrelevant. When he has that, then he could pass the Prime Minister immunity law. And then he doesn't have to worry about the criminal cases or anything else. And now we're stuck with, there's three branches of the democracy. There's the executive branch, the Prime Minister, which is Netanyahu. Then they got the legislative branch, which is the Knesset, which he controls. And there's the court system, which he neutralizes, so they don't exist. So you got the Knesset, which he controls, and the executive branch, which he controls, and voila, Israel has birthed a dictator. Now, I would think 75 to 90% of the Israeli public doesn't really understand what I told you. Seriously. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 60% don't understand it. Something like that. A major piece of them don't understand it. And a major piece of them don't care. And this is a problem. So, in order to continue in office, Netanyahu has three political entities to keep his coalition. One is his own Likud party, which he's the chairman of. And he has them not under perfect control, but reasonable control. Then there's these two right-wing guys called Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. Ben-Gvir is his last name, and his first name is Odd Smell or something, but it's Ben-Gvir, G-V-I-R. Both of these guys are lawyers, so they got something going on, but I don't think either of them ever practiced law seriously or anything, or maybe for a year or something. But they at least understand Netanyahu and how slippery he is. So they want to run the Palestinians out of Israel. They don't want the Palestinians, terrorists, running around shooting Israelis, car ramming them, bombing them, stabbing them, beating them up, harassing them. They don't want this anymore. They want to build in the West Bank, which they understand the land covenant in Genesis 15. They want to build in the West Bank, but they want to build 250,000 houses. Now, Netanyahu, in his idiocy, for the 20 or so years he was prime minister, has ruined the economy of Israel except for the experts, the wealthy. And he's gotten away with it. And the people in Israel, I would say 85% to 90% don't understand what he did. Okay? I do. They don't. How do you stop more Jews from moving to Israel? You run the prices up. You run the housing prices up. The housing prices here are a constant headache for me all the time. The rents are so high. It's insane. It is. I'm constantly concerned about this. And the landlords have the law on their side. They don't have to do the maintenance on the house. They make the people pay the property taxes. Yes, they do. It's sick what Netanyahu did. Finally, there's some people here that understand what a mean, miserable, self-hating Jew he is, and he's in 3 criminal cases, and they're trying to put him in jail. So there are a bunch of people in Israel now that do understand what a pig he is, okay? But most of the people don't really get it yet. So he's trying to change the whole legal system to stay in office. So he sees Israel as his family business. You got it? That's how he sees Israel, as his family business. Okay? Like the Saud family sees Saudi Arabia as their family business, or the sheiks that run the UAE, or the King of Jordan runs Jordan. He sees it that way too, but he's very, very wrong. So, Hezbollah is looking at what's going on today, and they're seeing Israel divided. The reservists, the pilots, for instance, and other reservists are saying they're not going to report for reserve duty if Netanyahu goes through with these things. So then the head general in the military is saying it's not up to them. They have no right to not report for reserve duty. Well, he could try enforcement. See what that does. That'll really topple the country. So Hezbollah is looking at this weakness that Israel has right now, and it's substantial. Shutting the country down, military reservists not reporting for duty, and they're sitting there thinking, hey, we got a golden opportunity, let's attack Israel. So instead of having enough guts to just go out and attack Israel, they're threatening Israel and making moves to see what Israel does, looking for weakness. They found it. Now they're escalating. What they're not planning on is Israel might do a preemptive strike against them. We've heard the generals talk about it. Will Israel still take some type of shellacking from their missiles and rockets? I would expect so. I would expect they're going to sit there and have their soldiers, of which they have 100,000, standing by a certain amount of missile launchers and rockets to try to hit targets in Israel. But we have someplace between 35 and 50 F-35s, which we retrofit. So they're more stealthy and more effective than the regular F-35s, which are plenty effective. And we have probably 150 or so other jets, maybe 180, a lot of F-16s. So we can take our F-16s and attack with those. We would use our Delilah missiles, which is a cruise missile that picks up a radar beam, follows the radar beam down the pipe, and blows the radar up. Okay? So when they turn their radar on to defend against an air attack, we put our Delilah missiles on them, and it follows the radar beam and blows them up. And if they don't like that and they start shutting their radar off, well, they can't defend themselves adequately. So if they're going to shut their radar off, it's the same thing as not having the radar. These are slow-moving missiles. They're about 550 mile an hour cruise-type missiles. They hug the terrain. They fly very low. They launched them from Mount Safed a couple of years ago into Syria, 2 of them, and they flew right over my house. And we were sitting here listening to this crazy noise coming, and they weren't 50 feet. They were probably about 100 feet up. And it was a screeching noise with a jet engine noise at the same time. It was a weird thing. Didn't sound like an aircraft. And that, I didn't know what they were. And then I found out that we had launched 2 of these missiles, Delilah, to blow up the radar in Syria. And they worked. So it's a quandary for our immature, militaristically immature Arab neighbors like Hezbollah and Lebanon and Syria and so forth. They flip their radar on and they lose their radar. So we would take their radar out, and then if they had any air defenses worth it, we would take that out. And then go from there. So the way Israel is ripped apart isn't necessarily going to stop the military from responding, because these reservists, if we're attacked, will go report for duty. Okay, now Netanyahu can get a war going with Hezbollah, although I don't think he's trying to do that. And while the war is going on, the protesters aren't going to go out in the street and protest for fear of missiles. Pass these legislations without protests, but I don't think he'll do that. Because the Knesset will be closed. You have to set up a meeting underground in a bunker, and I don't think that's what he's after. So Hezbollah is also talking about Hamas joining in the war, and that's Gaza. So it would be Palestinian Islamic Jihad, it would be Hamas in Gaza, and it would be Hezbollah in Lebanon, and maybe the Lebanese regular army, possibly. Not likely, but possibly. But they're not much of a threat. Probably nothing from Syria. And they would do their best to create as much turmoil and terrorism attacks inside Israel and the West Bank, Jerusalem, anywhere they could, from the Palestinian terrorists, militants living here. Now, there was recently released a document with Iran's plans for Israel, and I'll go through that with you in a minute. Let me check the chat real quick. Okay. I'm going to take a break for a minute, and we'll come back and go through that. All right. How many wars has Israel lost since 1948? None. Has Israel had to give territory up? Yes, but it's been done by coercion politically. They Carter and them forced them to give the Sinai Peninsula back. And then the Americans later on pressured them to give Gaza back, which Netanyahu was only too happy to do. And now they're pressuring Israel to create a Palestinian nation inside the West Bank. Yesterday, the West Bank launched 2 makeshift missiles into an Israeli settlement, and they didn't really hit it and they didn't hurt anybody, but they're trying to get the rockets built and launch rockets from inside the West Bank into Israel, like they do from Gaza, which used to be Israel. The Iranian document that came out basically is saying that Iran wants to create a very threatening environment to the Jews in Israel where they get killed. And the hopes are that the Israelis move out of Israel. They start thinking that it's better to leave. It sounds to me like Netanyahu's working with them, but I don't think it's the case. Much of the land here in Israel is, I think, 94% of the land cannot be owned by non-Jews and foreigners and stuff like that. Only 6% of the land. Okay? Non-Jews can't be. Why? Because the Arabs with their money would come here and buy the land. And then you say, well, how much is the rent? Oh, it's $28,000 a month. For a 2-bedroom apartment, well, take it or leave it, you know? You know, that kind of thing. So they would buy the land up and force us to leave. So that's why Israel does that. You don't really buy the land. You get the right to the land for 50 years. And at the end of 50 years, you've got to renew the lease. And Israel can impose conditions on you and be nasty and ugly with you. But if you go through the conditions, you know, usually you'll win and get it. But they're complete idiots. The way Israel is run is idiotic. Despots are not smart people. Okay? They're just not. Okay? I saw a picture of Biden walking with Prince Charles, and Biden was getting lost, and Charles had to direct him, you know. It's, I don't know. I mean, how they run him as president. I mean, and the other one, Kamala. What qualifications does that person have to be vice president? Beyond me. Beyond me. I don't understand that one iota. Okay. So what's Netanyahu going to do about Hezbollah? Well, we're on war footing with the military for sure. The best move that Israel can make is a preemptive strike. But before they do a preemptive strike, they're going to have to make sure Biden is with them, because that's the way Israel operates, stupidly. Maybe they're not going to be that concerned with Biden these days. They're going to want to see that Hezbollah really is getting ready to attack us, and then we'll probably do a preemptive strike. If Hezbollah could just be bluffing, okay? They see turmoil in Israel, and they stop and they say, maybe they're afraid to fight. That's why they're leaving that last tent up. So let's push them and see what we can get out of them. We'll threaten war and see what happens. Well, the guys in Israel have enough brains to figure that out. So they're watching this thing. And their intelligence gathering is pretty high. Very, very high. And they're, trying to figure out what's going on. If they think that Hezbollah... if Israel doesn't give in to the demands of Hezbollah, which will be the case, then Hezbollah has a choice to make. Israel's not that scared. And Hezbollah has to decide, do they want to roll the dice and see how split Israel is and attack Israel, which is tremendous. It's 10, 15 times more powerful than Lebanon, 20 times more powerful. See, they don't understand the real capability of Israel. Have you ever seen or heard surface-to-surface missiles being used by Israel other than those Delilahs I told you about? No. Do you think Israel has no surface-to-surface missiles? I know people that used to be in charge of, in the high-ranking officers in charge of secret missile bases in Israel years ago. They got missiles. Thousands and thousands and thousands of missiles. They haven't used them. They don't want anybody to know about our missiles. They don't want them getting radar locks on the missile and figuring out what they can learn about the missile. Then there's a chance a missile doesn't explode or doesn't explode completely and they could study the missile. They don't want that. They're prepared for a 5-front war. What does that mean? They're prepared to take a war from Egypt, from Jordan, from Syria, from Iraq, and from Lebanon. Probably also Saudi Arabia, not that they'll ever see that happen. Saudi Arabia is way too timid for anything like that. Okay? So, they're prepared for this. Jordan and Egypt today are not joining in any wars. Not today, but soon, according to Bible prophecy, but not today. If we don't do a preemptive strike, Hezbollah is going to get off lots of missiles till we can neutralize them, and that's going to cause a lot of damage. And people are going to die, and when I'm talking people are going to die, it might be in the thousands. Now, if Netanyahu never started with this political reform to keep himself out of jail, and we never got protesters because there'd be no need, then it wouldn't be it. So do I put all the blame on Netanyahu? You bet. He's a piece of garbage. He's a narcissistic psychopath that only cares about himself. And this whole thing is really just about it's really just about him and keeping himself out of jail. Okay, now let's do some scriptures about what's going on today. Let's go to Psalm 21. To the chief musician, a psalm of David, the king, shall joy in thy strength, O Lord, and in thy salvation. How great shall he rejoice! Thou hast given him his heart's desire. This is David talking. And hast not withholden the request of his lips. Selah. Selah is, like, it's a word that we don't really use. I don't know, what's the actual meaning of it? It's kind of a pause, or, to think about it or something like that. Okay. It's an ancient musical term, you might say. So Psalm 21:3 we're on now. For thou preventest him with the blessings of goodness, Thou settest a crown of pure gold on his head. He asked life of thee, and thou gavest him, even length of days forever and ever. He's talking about eternal life. His glory is great in thy salvation. Honor and majesty hast thou laid upon him. For thou hast made him most blessed forever. Thou hast made him exceeding glad with thy countenance. For the king trusteth in Jehovah, and through the mercy of the Most High he shall not be moved. Thine hands shall find out all thine enemies. Thy right hand shall find out those that hate thee. Thou shalt make them as a fiery oven in the time of thine anger. The Lord shall swallow them up in his wrath, and the fire shall devour them. Now, in the DOB, daughter of Babylon, the fires break out and burn them up. In Zechariah 12, when they lay siege against Israel, the two witnesses have the fire coming out of their mouths and burn them up. So what does it say? The fire shall devour them. The word for devour is Strong's number 398, akal. It means, they say devour, why don't they say burn up? Because they're twisting the scriptures. Their fruit shalt thou destroy from the earth, their works, and their seed from among the children of men. For they intended evil against thee. They imagined a mischievous device which they are not able to perform. That's what you're seeing today. They intended evil against thee, and they can't go up to heaven and kill Jehovah and Yeshua, although they'd probably like to. They imagine a mischievous device. They go after Israel to get even with Jehovah. Because that gets them to make sure he doesn't reign over them using Israel. But it doesn't work for them. Therefore shalt thou make them turn their back, when thou shalt make ready thine arrows upon thy strings against the face of them. Be thou exalted, Jehovah, in thine own strength, so will we sing and praise thy power. Okay. Now we'll go to Psalm 2. Why do the heathen rage? Now the word for heathen is goyim, means those without God. What does rage mean? 7283, Strong's number, Ragash. To be in tumult or commotion, to conspire and plot. Tumultuous rage, that's them. That's the terrorist groups. Okay. Why do the heathen rage and the people that's not a good translation. Is people. This is Leam. Wait a minute. It's like a gathering of the nations. And the nations, the gathered people, imagine And what is the word for imagine? 1897 Strong's in the Hebrew. Hagah. Mutter, devise, plot. It doesn't really mean imagine. Excuse me a second. Yep. Okay, bye. I've got to run out for a second. There's a package delivery. This will be quick. Not long. Sorry about that. Yeah? Yeah. I know, but I've been training him. He was pretty good this time. He's all right. Yeah, I have several times. Yeah, I know. But I got it. He was waiting. I got it. Okay, bye. Okay. Um. All right. Now let's see where we're at. They imagine a vain thing. Okay, what's a vain thing? Reek in Hebrew. Emptiness, vain, worthless. Okay, that's what's going on here. Okay? We haven't lost the war yet. They've never since 1948 come in here and taken territory from us. Never happened. These stupid Israeli Espot leaders give territory back. That's what happens. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against Jehovah and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, Jehovah shall have them in derision. And that's what's happening now. They're going to be going into derision. Okay. See, the two witnesses are going to be coming on the scene very soon. The wars are one thing. The two witnesses are different. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Okay? Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. Now the king would be Yeshua. The anointed prince is not the king. Yeshua is the king of Israel. There's not going to be another king of Israel until Yeshua returns, but we have the anointed prince, which is not the same thing as a king, but he sits on a throne anyway. I will declare the decrees Jehovah hath said unto me. Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Speaking of Yeshua. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the Goyim for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. See, Yeshua rules over the Goyim with a rod of iron. They teach in the church that he rules over Israel with a rod of iron, and they rule with him with the same rod of iron over Israel. It's a great theory, except it's completely absent from the scriptures. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, be instructed, you judges of the earth, of the land, it says. Serve Jehovah with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, the S-O-N, Yeshua is referencing, lest he be angry, and you perish from the way, when his wrath kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. And our enemies don't put their trust in him. Our enemies from within don't put their trust in him, and they don't even fear the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom. That's why I keep saying these leaders couldn't even run a 7-Eleven. They have little guests inside them that tell them what to do. We're not so smart anyway. And the next scripture is Psalm 46. To the chief musician for the sons of Korah, a song upon Alamot God, which is for female, like sopranos or something like that. Upon Alamot Elohim. Upon Alamot, which is female soprano. Then the next sentence is Elohim is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear, so they're saying we're not going to fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. Well, the earth will be removed at the end of the millennium, in the 8th day. Though the waters, that's when your rapture is, you meet them in the air, and you go up on the clouds of heaven to heaven. Though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shall shake with the swelling thereof, or could be earthquakes and volcanoes. There is a river, the stream whereof shall make glad the city of God, of Elohim, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High, Jerusalem, I would think. God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God, or Elohim, shall help her, and that right early. The heathen raged, the help comes early. The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted. Jehovah of hosts, it really would mean armies, Jehovah of armies, is with us. Elohim Yaakov, Jacob's Elohim God, is our refuge. Salah. Come, behold the works of Jehovah, what desolations he hath made in the earth. He maketh wars to cease. That could mean beat their swords into plowshares. He maketh wars to cease unto the earth, unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow and cutteth the spear in sunder, breaks the spear. He burns the chariot in fire. Be still and know that I am Jehovah, that I am Elohim. So what he's really saying is, Anaki Elohim, he's saying, I'm Elohim. I will be exalted among the Goyim. I will be exalted in the earth. Jehovah of hosts is with us. The Elohim of Yaakov, our refuge. Selah. Okay. This is where we're at now, you know. There was an article I picked up in one of the Israeli publications that is run by believers, but I think you would probably find them to be false believers, because if they were true believers, it wouldn't exist. Let me get it open. Hold on. The article reads like this: Why do the nations rage? Asks Israeli lawmaker. Member of the Knesset says, there are many reasons to rage, but the fulfillment of biblical prophecy isn't one, and every Bible-believing American knows it. I don't know what he's trying to say. There's a lot going on in the world. Paris is burning, Iran is arming, and that whole Russia-Ukraine thing is still raging. But the Biden administration just had to take the time to express how deeply troubled it is by a few more Jewish houses being built. The remark was made by U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller in response to Israel's approval of 5,700 new housing units in existing Jewish towns in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. This kind of natural growth was supposed to be covered by the so-called Oslo Accords, but Miller nevertheless called it an impediment to peace. Jewish homes on historically Jewish lands, that's what the White House is raising the alarm about. And then he quotes Psalm 2:1, why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain? When we read it in Scripture, we tend to see it through a prophetic lens, some living phenomenon, but now that we are living in the midst of it, the question takes on an incredulous tone. Why do the nations rage? Is this a joke? A few Jews building homes on barren hills. A few Jews building homes on barren hilltops that belong to their ancestors is cause for urgent UN Security Council sessions and White House hand-wringing. Is this really the most pressing matter of the day? Why do the nations rage? They're raging. The reality of this, although doesn't know it or wouldn't state it, is to stop prophecy from being fulfilled. That's it. They don't want God to reign over the world using Israel to do so. They don't want Israel to be the head of all the nations. They don't want to submit to God. They want to keep doing their evil and wicked things and accumulating their fiat money and buying cars and houses and boats and all that stuff. Member of the Knesset Amit Halevi, the Likud party, had the perfect biblical response to Miller and all those so deeply troubled. When Israel builds in Shiloh and Beitel, Beitel means house of God, in Dotan and in Jerusalem, this is Israel returning home. The vision of the prophets is being fulfilled. I certainly don't need to explain to Americans what is Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Shiloh, and Beitel. Many cities in the USA bear these names, said Halevi from the Knesset podium late last month. When we, the Jews, return to Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, is what it's called by the media and the nations, we return justice and truth to the world. When we return to Jerusalem and Hebron, we strengthen pure faith in the world at large. He continued. Yeah, so far so good. This is clear to every American who has read the Bible and knows the Old Testament stressed the Israeli lawmaker. Well, when you say read the Old Testament, the herd thins out quite a bit because very few of these church people pay much attention to the Old Testament. If the nations want to be outraged, Halevi noted that there are plenty of good reasons. Iran's, and he lists a few, Iran's quest to destroy Israel and dominate the Middle East. Rising anti-Semitism against Jews in New York and London, among other places. Rampant anti-Israel incitement in Palestine, in Palestinian school books, teaching kids to hate. I would also talk about Mahmoud Abbas' Slave for Pay program, inspiring terrorism. About these things, my American friends, we should all be troubled and work vigorously to prevent them, said Halevi. Halevi means the Levite. But you shouldn't be troubled when things go according to plan, he added, in reference to the fact that God's word clearly foretold the resettlement of the land of Israel by the children of Israel. He's returned from the captivity, absolutely right. Two responses to the number two responses to why do the nations rage? Rage asks Israel lawmaker. Robert's World says, oh, this is just people commenting. One guy says, among amen, their rage is ultimately against God. He's correct. So, I did think that was a very good article that was written, and I thought I would read it because it was worth reading. Okay, let's see if we got any new developments here regarding the war breaking out or something. Well, they're telling us Netanyahu's pretty scared about it, the shutdown they're working on today. Well, the Bank of America is saying the Israeli shekel is is dropping in value, and it has a little bit. Let me check it real good, but I don't think the world is really awake and trading yet. But let me see what I can come up with here. Oh, it changed a little bit. It was 3.7. It's down to 3.69. It's somebody's getting it to get a little stronger. The dollar buys 3.69. It was buying 3.7 shekels yesterday, but that's a pretty slight difference, but still a difference. Let's see what else we can pick up here about Hezbollah. Oh, I'll go to Telegram. That'll have it. Oh, let's see. They've been blocking roads, and the police have been clearing them. That means a lot of people probably came to work late. They're using tents, burning tires, banners to block roads. They went for the airport, and that was police cleared that. Is that you? Oh, okay. I wanted to make sure it wasn't the dog. Well, one of these Netanyahu cronies is calling for the protesters to be arrested immediately for sedition and disruption of public order. That's a sign of the dictatorship eliminating the democratic right to protest. They're calling it terror. Yeah, terror. Real terror is idiots. The opposition leader, Yesh Atid, is speaking up for the protesters. But he's probably not going to have any ability to do anything. So the protests are working, but not highly effectively. I don't know about the malls closing yet. It's only 10:44 in the morning, so we'll get more details as the day rolls on. There's a general named Ishak Barik. I'm not sure he's still a general, or he looks like an old guy. Probably used to be a general. He said the next war will be a total war with 3,500 rockets a day, and the roads will be blocked. The media hides the truth from the people. We will witness riots and shooting at any movement. There are more than 400,000 weapons for the Zionists. The army is not ready. They may decide that it's time to kill the Palestinians, is what they're saying. The army is not ready for war. We are likely the Titanic on the way to an iceberg, but we don't want to understand. Yeah, I'm not giving a whole lot of stuff to that. He doesn't have God in the equation, so it's not a real intelligent commentary. There's massive protests now in Jerusalem. So, NATO Secretary Stoltenberg is saying, NATO Secretary General, I think it's Stoltenberg, I'm not sure, is saying Sweden is going to be a full member of NATO. Oh, the Israeli protesters stormed the Knesset. This protest has got legs. They're in Haifa. See, Netanyahu's not going to stop because he doesn't want to go to jail. So it's sort of something that I think God engineered, to bring the government down, democracy. It is starting to look like military are joining the protesters, so that could be a coup d'etat by the military. That could happen, and that would be a good ending, I guess. It's one way to get rid of it. A Russian submarine commander in the Black Sea was assassinated during some exercises. That's too weird to really understand. We'll have to wait for more information. "300 Israeli reservists from the cyber system." These are the anti-cyber attack guys. They're good. They protect private industry, the military, the government. They said that they're going to cease their volunteering in military service due to the plan to weaken the judiciary. You got the pilots, you got them. It's getting bad. It's really getting bad. Ukrainian intelligence said they killed the submarine commander. Okay, that's different. These protests are going on hot and heavy, and they're very serious. Very, very, very serious. Good. They're trying to delay flights in and out of the airport. They're trying to shut the country down, the protesters. Here, just to show you the sheer idiocy of these despots and their government. Ahmad Bilal was fired from Israel's main public bus company, Egged, after he posted support for Palestinian terrorism on social media. Today, it was discovered that he had been hired by another bus company that regularly transports Israeli soldiers around the country. See what idiots they are? Sheer, unadulterated morons, these despots. Or they hate us and want to see us go down, but then they go down too, so I doubt it. I don't know. They go down too. And they live here also, so. Israel might try to meddle with, America may try to meddle with what's going on in Israel, but I'm not so sure. I think Biden's not got the guts to do very many things, including that. The protesters got in the Knesset and tried to super glue themselves to the floor. Clever. So today's the day of resistance, they're calling it. Now, a home front command, which is sort of like Homeland Security, but it's more of the military though, wants to build a red alert siren system in the Jezreel Valley region in anticipation of rocket attacks from Jenin, that's the West Bank. So they're anticipating it's going to get better. See, they're morons. They don't know how to do anything. The people, they can't keep the people safe in Israel. Now they're trying to decriminalize Netanyahu and make him a dictator. It's ridiculous that people don't want this. They are intending to go back to the airport this afternoon. We're going to have an incoming day of 84,000 tourists, and they're going to try to mess that up. So they want to hurt the tourism, and they want the people to understand what Netanyahu really is. Well, it's going to be an interesting day today. I will do updates if anything serious happens. So make sure you're subscribed and you click the notice bell. So if I do updates on YouTube as live streams, you'll get notified. And I probably will do, but I'm not going to do it unless there's something very unusual and of major significance that occurs. So I'm Moshe, my wife is Rivka, so please pray for us, pray for our peace, safety, protection. Pray for our animals and pets to be happy, healthy, and whole, not run away. Pray for our finances, and please pray for my wife's new business, and pray for cooler weather. It works when I ask you to pray. The weather drops a few degrees usually, so please pray for cooler weather here where I am, at least in my region. And pray for the two witnesses to emerge openly. And pray for the peace of Yerushalayim, and pray for better videos and live streams. And I will stay on top of this situation and keep you apprised. There's many things going on now that are of great importance. What is Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jew? What happens in the West Bank? What happens with the protests and the government and Netanyahu and the Attorney General who they want to fire, and all of this, and what does Hezbollah do, and what does Israel do, and what does Biden do, and we've got quite a lot of stuff going on. Okay, so I hope you got something out of this, and I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and all those who love Jehovah, and I'm out.